Hello and welcome to our program Where God Weeps, a program where we talk about the situation of the suffering and persecuted church around the world. Bangladesh, a country in South Asia, has about 163 million inhabitants. The great majority are Muslims, followed by Hindus, with Catholics a tiny minority at some 400,000. Most Catholics belong to ethnic minorities. Bangladesh broke free from Pakistan in 1971 and ever since then has wrestled with the question of its fundamental identity. Officially, secularism is promoted by the ruling Awami League, but at a societal level, a current of militant Islamism generates hostility against religious minorities. The conflict over the country's identity has thus given birth to two sharply opposed ideological factions: secularists and Islamists. To tell us more about the situation in the country and the role of the Church, it is my great pleasure to welcome His Excellency Bishop Emmanuel Kanon Rozario, the Bishop of the Barishal diocese in Bangladesh. Welcome, Your Excellency, and thank you for being with us here today on our program.
Thank you, Mark, for inviting me here and this afternoon. I'm very pleased to be here with you.
Thank you so much. Your Excellency, a little bit to you first. Your background, the Catholic Church is very new in Bangladesh. Was your family historically always Catholic, or was there at some point a conversion from another religion to the Catholic faith?
Christianity came to Bangladesh in that area more than 500 years ago, 600 nowadays, yeah, it can say so. So from that time on, our ancestors, they embraced Christianity, and I was born in that Christian family. So we are called traditional Christians. So
you were born and raised in a Catholic environment. You are the fifth of 6 brothers and 2 sisters. When did you first have a sense of your vocation? When did you say, God is speaking to me in this very particular way?
It's very interesting, yes. Since I was born in a very traditional Catholic family, we were 8 brothers and sisters, so my parents were so pious, religious minded. Every day evening we used to say the prayer, family prayer, Rosary prayer. After the prayer, my mom used to say stories about the religion, about the priests and sisters. That inspired us, especially inspired me. And in a special way, when I was in the primary school and during religion classes, the teacher used to ask who want to become priests, who want to become sisters, etc. So in that time I didn't know much about that, but I had the interest, so I used to raise my hand and said, yes, I want to become a priest. So from that time on, and seeing the priest saying the mass and having the opportunity to be the altar servers, following closely from the side of the altar, how the priest offers the mass, that inspired me a lot. So that actually, from that time on, I received the insight that maybe God calls us to this state of life, to become a priest. So I nurtured that, and I followed actually.
Finally took the decision.
Yes.
Pope Francis recently appointed you the Bishop of the Diocese of Barishal. What was your response when you first heard the word that you were going to become a bishop?
Well, that was it's a very important task to become a bishop nowadays. And now when I was told about it, and I realized immediately that am I worthy for that? Actually, it is tough for me. Maybe I'm not worthy, but still, if the church needs me, if the church thinks that I can be of help, so relying on the help of God, I said yes, because this is not my own strength or own initiative. It's God who provides what we need for fulfilling His mission. So realizing that, I said yes. I believe that God, when gives responsibility, He always helps whenever I need.
Saint Pope John Paul II used to call the Bangladesh Catholic community a little flock. with the understanding to the biblical image of being called to be the salt of the earth. Is this also your understanding of Catholicism in Bangladesh? You're such a minority, but you're the salt of the earth.
Definitely, it is also my own understanding. Pope John Paul said this biblical imagery in comparison of the Christianity in the land. It is true actually, because the Christianity is very, very tiny minority there in the midst of majority of people of other religions. So as Jesus said, be not afraid, my little flock. So Pope John Paul said this in order to encourage the Christians, even though minorities, but to have the assurance that Jesus is always with us. So I think it is my also understanding that in the vast majority of the people of other religion, we the Christians, being tiny minority, we are there as the light, as the salt, because our presence has impact. Our presence has impact, and that is what we are called to be.
And the church is growing.
Church is growing, yeah. The church is growing.
How?
Because it is the work of God. No, when God kept it there, God called us to be there, and we are living our Christian faith. We are trying to bear witness of Christ's love. We are showering, the light, shedding the light, no? So, and seeing the impact of the Christian life, many are attracted to that. So, willingly, we are not imposing anybody or
it's an invitation.
Invitation, and seeing the work and the lifestyle and the presence of Christianity. So somebody has to decide whether if somebody is willing to come join the Christianity, okay, they can.
Your Excellency, tribal animists make up about 3% of the total population, and of these ethnic groups, about half are Catholic. How did the Catholic concentration come about in these tribal communities?
Well, there are so many ethnic groups in Bangladesh. As you said, that some of them have been converted to Christianity, some others are not. But the tribal people, they need support, they need care, they need also the pastoral care. So in order to help them to grow as fully human being, integrated human being, so they need also formation and support, education and other things. So,
and I suppose perhaps you have to tell me, they come from a religious tradition of traditional religions is the background of many of these ethnic groups, whereas as we know the majority of the population in Bangladesh is Muslim, where it might be more difficult to convert to Christianity. Is it perhaps for this reason also this traditional religious background was more open to Christianity?
Yeah, the tribal peoples are more open, and the majority of people they do not complain when the tribal peoples are converted to Christianity.
They don't mind so much.
They don't mind so much, no. Unless we speak about the conversion of the Muslims, no. I mean the majority people.
Right.
But since the tribal people they have coming from traditional religion, so they don't mind much.
It's not such a problem.
No.
This brings us to another question, which is the question of the fact that Catholics, as we know, are a tiny minority, and many of them are very poor, and in some cases also discriminated against. What do we understand by discrimination against the Catholics?
Well, discrimination, actually, there was a time when I heard also when I was a little young, very young, no? I heard that in some areas, village people also, Christians were discriminated because they are Christians. But I don't think nowadays there are much discrimination in that sense, that so we all are citizens of the country. That is our first identity. We are Bangladeshis, no? We are citizens, native of the country. So, but still, since minority, there are some sort of limitations. I mean, in different sectors. For example, if you want to work in different sectors of the government, maybe Being a minority, we cannot arrive up to that level, certain level. But still, we are contributing. Many of our members, they are in the parliament nowadays.
So the situation
politics,
is getting better.
Getting better.
Very interesting. And now there is an issue which not only affects Christians, but different religious minorities, and that is the question of land grabbing. Many NGOs have put a finger on the issue of land grabbing. And this is especially pertinent in Bangladesh because, of course, the population density is so high, the land is so precious. Can you give us a little bit of an insight as to what we understand by land grabbing and what's happening for not only the Christians, but many religious minorities?
Yeah, of course, even though if the government, we have all the goodwill to do justice, but there are groups, there are peoples who are occupied themselves in this area of land grabbing. They do it by, as per their own satisfaction, own plan, own benefit. So they possess lands, they occupied lands of other people.
So they just walk in and say this is now ours, and by violence
they make some sort of documents. They make documents. Otherwise, they cannot just simply go and possess the land. There are people who go work secretly in the offices, make documents, and then they say this.
And then they come and say this is mine.
Ours. So
and then for perhaps the religious minorities.
It happens very often, and especially I have seen also from my experience, many tribal peoples, they are deprived of their land right. They lost their lands.
And I suppose part of the issue is that many of the religious minorities, including Christians, they're settled on ancestral land, and so they may not have the papers, the documentation to defend themselves then when another group comes in and says, this is ours, even if they have falsely prepared these papers, no?
Yeah, but actually, since we have our ancestral land, but nowadays they cannot drive up, from our own land, but those people, those who are, for example, the weak, poor, tribal. So some in that cases maybe they make documents. For example, for us maybe they cannot. They cannot. They do also where they have access in that area. There are people who have no power, no influence,
and no way to defend themselves.
Yeah. So, but in that case, our church and also our NGOs, Caritas, for example, we help a lot. We help a lot to do justice, to protect the right of the people, and to safeguard their land. So that is what we are doing.
I want to turn to another question, and that is the regrettable rise, but not only in Bangladesh, we see it all over the world, of Islamist groups, extremists. And I think it's important that we distinguish between the Muslims who disagree and this small faction of Islamists and extremists who cause so much trouble. And regrettably, it's also occurring in Bangladesh. Over the last 2 years, Islamist militants have initiated a campaign of violent attack targeting bloggers, secular bloggers, human rights activists, as well as religious minorities, particularly Hindu and Christians. Is Islamist extremism on the rise, and how have Christians particularly experienced this in Bangladesh?
Well, looking at the overall situation of the world, we see that this influence is there, and also some sort of influence we see in rise in our country too. As you have mentioned already, that some bloggers are assassinated, some leaders, some people of other religions, some foreigners. But these are scattered events, I can say, scattered events, because this sort of group exist, but in hidden, in secret places. But our government is always aware of that, and our military, our administration, government administration is always aware, and they take a strong position against.
So it's responsive. They are responding to the issue.
Yeah, that is very, very positive. That is very positive. That's why nowadays we have experienced some scattered events, and now we see that our government can identify where they are, their location, and they can all control. The government has a control.
Very good.
So
it calms the worries of the.
So far, I think it's good.
In addition to the rise in violence, there is another phenomenon, and that is the rapid growth of Quranic schools, what we would understand as madrasas, which have grown faster than any other institution in the educational sector in Bangladesh. Allegations are that many of these madrasas are funded by governments of more conservative Muslim countries from outside. Is this your understanding also, and what risk do you see here?
Well, that is true that the number of madrasas are increasing, growing, the numbers are increasing. And of course, these are funded by donors from other countries, and that is also true. But we know that madrasas are for teaching religion, the Quran and other, so religious values. It depends. On some madrasas, I think they have positive influence. They do that they give proper religious teaching. But perhaps there are some where they give some sort of extremist idea. So that can be a risk. That can be a risk, yeah.
Now, from the side of the church, the happy news is that you are also managing hundreds, that is, the Catholic Church is managing hundreds of primary and secondary schools open to children and young people of all religions. How important do you see education for the future of Bangladesh?
Yeah, that is from the very beginning of the church in Bangladesh, the church realized the need of education for the proper growth of humanity. So from the very beginning of Christianity, we opened schools, and it is not only for the Catholics, for the Christians, it's open for all people of all religion. Because we know that we are in a country, we are the citizens, we need to contribute to the country also in order to help the country to grow, especially in the human resources. So education is very essential, and therefore we run so many schools and colleges and university. And you will be surprised to see that how many people, students of other religions, the majority now, because Christians are minorities, so majority are non-Christians, Muslims. They are benefiting from our educational institutes, and we are happy that we can give this light of education to our children, to our natives. And I hope that this will give a positive impact for the country, because those who study in our schools and colleges, they realize the certain values. They see how to become more generous and open-minded, and to help each other. So that is what we try to give.
And I think that, as you've already indicated, I only bring it forth, the idea of living together, that from the young age, when the young Christians, the young Hindus, the young Muslims are together in a classroom, growing up together, this fosters a living together, which is so important.
That is very, very important. That is what we start to make a dialogue in the very first stage of our life in the schools. I will learn how to coexist, make a living together with other people. What Pope Francis says now in Fratelli Tutti, we all are brothers and sisters. That concept is already alive in our country, in the schools, because we know how to make our living together with other, in peaceful living, in harmonious living with other people. The schools are means to provide this environment.
And how would you characterize the relations between, for example, Muslims, the majority population, and Christians in Bangladesh? Is it a healthy one of this coexistence?
I think it's healthy, because from our side, we accept everybody as brothers, sisters, and those who are accepted, they also learn how to accept others. So I see our relationship, the relationship among the Christians and the majority people of other religions is good, and moderate, I say. Because Bangladesh is a moderate Muslim country, so we are still. And
in today's society, as we see all around the world, it can be an important example for other countries.
I think, yeah, that can be, because with the Christians, I don't think that there are so many negative influences, impacts. But there are some scattered events, of course, scattered,
isolated incidents.
Isolated.
Yeah. Your Excellency, I want to now turn a little bit towards the faith. Can you tell us, is the Catholic faith growing in Bangladesh? Is the faith of Christian faith, is it growing? And how do you see, do you have native vocations, for example? Do you have native religious sisters, native priests? Or are you still very much dependent on missionary priests or sisters coming from outside?
Actually, it happened in the beginning of Christianity because missionaries were the one who came to preach, to evangelize. And until recently, the missionaries were very active and they were numerous. But nowadays, we see the decrease of the number of missionaries. On the other hand, we see that the increase of the local vocation, I mean the vocation of the local people in the church for priestly religious life. For example, in Bangladesh, we have 8 dioceses. At one point, we were missionary bishops. Now, in all dioceses, we have local bishops.
It's a healthy sign.
It's a healthy sign. Therefore, priests, there are many missionaries now, PMA missionaries, Holy Cross missionaries, Zaburian missionaries, and other the Jesuit missionaries. But now, very few. Their numbers are very few. But on the other hand, our local
your local church is taking the
place. They are taking the responsibility of the parishes, and also the sisters now, and religious sisters. We have missionary sisters, very few now, but local sisters, they are serving the church. So this is a very positive sign, I think. In that sense, we can say that our church is becoming mature and taking the responsibility of the church. But on the other hand, if you think about the increase of the number of Christians, I think actually if you calculate, you see the ratio of the growth of population, since Christians are very tiny minority, so birth ratio is very high among the non-Christians. So if you go for the statistics, the ratio will be decreasing actually.
Okay, because the population is growing so much faster.
But anyway, we say in that Christianity is growing, but not very fast, it's slow, but it's growing.
Again, the idea of a little flock.
Little flock.
That's the vocation. Your Excellency, I want to touch briefly on another area of growth, which is, and the development of the church is very dependent on catechists. Why are catechists so important, and how do you see the future role of catechists in Bangladesh?
Actually, this is a very important issue. I think the role of catechists is very important for the church, local church, because,
But when we speak about a catechist, who are we speaking about? Are these husbands and wives? What do we understand by catechist?
Actually, catechists, they are the baptized faithful, baptized, no?
Okay.
Baptized faithful, so they are among the ladies. They have particular call also. They also realize a particular vocation within their heart to go in villages, to bear witness, to proclaim the good news, no? They are the simple family Christians, I mean baptized Catholics. So they are so much important because, when the missionaries also came in the beginning, they were so few in number. But they chose catechists, they trained up, and they sent to villages. So they were the instrument actually for bearing the good news to the people.
It's a real commitment for a family father who then has to trek 3 days to go, I don't know where, to the next village.
It's really a big commitment. And the role of catechist is very important. It was very important, it is, and it will remain important also, because we need always the catechist. But we also know that catechists, since they are in the families, they have the families, they live in the families also. They need also adequate support, financial support for their living now, family now. So,
and I suppose also, just very briefly, that language is an issue because of the many different tribal groups.
Yes.
You may not necessarily speak, I don't know how many ethnic different tribal languages there are, but you may not speak it, or a local priest may not speak it.
Yes, that is true. That is why we try to look for catechists targeting a particular group of ethnic group or particular people of particular language. So we choose someone who can communicate easily in their mother tongue. So that is very helpful, no?
So you are hopeful for the church in Bangladesh?
Yes, I am hopeful, of course. Yes. Because Bangladesh, as little flock, it will remain alive.
Yes.
And because the light that Christ himself is, will never die. And the soul will always give the taste of Christianity.
Your Excellency, Thank you so much for having been with us today in our program.
You are very welcome, and I also thank you for inviting me and giving me the chance to share a few things about our country, about our religion, about me about my personal life and vocation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having been with us today on our program, Where God Weeps. And if you'd like to know more about the situation of the church in Bangladesh, or perhaps how you might be able to help, I would encourage you to look at the contact information at the end of this program. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.